And it just kind of came out of nowhere? You just randomly just did that?
Yep. Yeah, we were, like I said, locking up the church, and he grabbed my hand when I was walking out of a hallway and just said, "Don't kiss me back," and kissed me.
Welcome back to Other People's Lives. I'm Joe Santagato.
I'm Greg Dybec.
For anyone out there that would like to be a guest on our show, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com.
Today, we're speaking to a woman who was sexually abused by her church's youth pastor. Unfortunately, this is a story that we hear way too often, but we have the guest on. We're going to learn all about her experience, the aftermath, and what ended up happening to this pastor. So thank you so much for being on today.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for choosing us. Obviously, this isn't an easy story to talk about, and we're just always thankful when people trust us with their stories and choose our platform to spread awareness for things like this.
Of course.
So, can you just start out by just explaining your relationship with the church when you were younger, just kind of your memories of getting involved in the church and how you ended up meeting this pastor for the first time?
Yeah, for sure. So growing up, church was always a huge part of my life, specifically Christianity. And I had always been heavily involved. So since the time I was pretty young, like 6, I had been a member of this church, and it was always just something that was expected in my family, that we would all help out with the church as much as we could. It was a smaller congregation of people, and I always loved it. Church was always my safe space. I wasn't the squeaky clean, uptight Christian type person, but this church was very accepting, and it was always a big part of my life. And about the time I was getting ready to graduate from high school, given that it was such a small church, they didn't really have a lot for what they called young adult people. So the pastor recommended to our new youth pastor that I would be a good fit for sort of plugging into the youth program to help assist this new youth pastor with leading the youth group. And that's kind of how I met this man and got involved with him.
How old was this man?
So he was 7 years older than me. So at the time that I met him, I was about 16. So he was about 24 years old, 25.
And what was your initial impression of this person?
I was a very, very trusting person. So especially in the church, I mean, it's supposed to be a place where you can, one of the most safe places to be. And so he was no different than any other adult I had interacted with in the leadership realm at the church. He had been at the church a little while before I even worked with him, and he had never made any sort of impression on me. So I just didn't feel any sort of way. Just, oh, okay, cool. You play the drums at church, and now I'm going to help you lead the youth group. Didn't really have much of an impression of him right away.
So what was that initial relationship? You said that you were helping him with the youth group. So how often were you seeing him, and what type of work were you guys doing together? Yeah.
So it started where my role was kind of to not teach on Sunday or Wednesday nights whenever they met. It was more to help plan different events that the youth might find fun, different outreach programs. I was kind of a mentor to the youth because a lot of them knew me. And so my role was sort of to just be there to help coordinate kind of the fun stuff, I guess you could say. That was my main role, kind of to be the voice of reason when it comes to knowing what that age group might want to see.
Right. And when do you think, how far into this working relationship did you start to notice that it started to become a little bit inappropriate?
So it was a slow process that it's taken years of therapy to even work through because it was so heavy with grooming. So for probably the first year that I worked with him, it was very squeaky clean. I don't know, I guess you could say. So it was very much like he almost went above and beyond, where every time I would meet with him, it would be in the church. And if it was just us in the meeting, like the doors would stay open. And, he very much tried to be like the cool guy, where he would make his jokes and wanted to seem like very charismatic, very easy to talk to. And he would make comments outright like, we need to be careful, keep our doors open when we meet together. We want to stay above reproach, and, make it out like it was a joke, but it made me feel very safe. Like, doors are always open. We meet in a room with a window in it, everything like that. And slowly over time, as for people that might not know how grooming works, which that's the danger of it. Most people don't even know that they're being groomed. It usually, they will start by introducing new things that push the boundaries. And once they see what they can get away with, then they push the boundaries a little bit more. And by doing that, it kind of normalizes a lot of those things. So it went from, we're being super careful, doors are always open, to, hey, I was thinking we could meet in my apartment. And this man was also married, which is an important detail. And a lot of times it would be, oh, come to our apartment, we'll feed you dinner and we'll have our meeting there. But he and his wife would be there. So I'm still living at home, and my parents were like, no, we're fine with that. We trust this man. And then after that, it moved to, okay, well, why don't you just come over and we're going to meet. My wife's at work, and immediately red flags are going off in my head. But there was the first time he called, and I was just starting into college at that point. I remember being on the phone and hearing her in the background saying, yeah, I'm fine with it. Like, actually, it would be great if you could come over and hang out with him. Then he won't talk to me so much when I come home from work. So in my mind, that I was like, okay, there was red flags, but like, what am I worried about? Like, this man is, we trust him, and she trusts this situation. So why should I not have a problem with that? And then about the time I turned 18, it was very, very calculated. I've since learned, but that's when things very quickly started escalating into the physical realm.
Do you remember the first instance when he pushed that boundary into physical and sexual abuse?
Yeah. So a lot of times it started with, sexual harassment, I guess you could classify it as, where he started making, The Office was really big at the time. This was like a long time ago. I'm old, but The Office was big, and he loved making the "that's what she said" jokes, which, to the youth, it was like, oh, that makes him like a cool guy. But he was saying them more and more often just with me. And then it became weird things like wanting back rubs, foot rubs, or, touches here and there. And then the first time, very vividly, where you couldn't explain it away, it wasn't completely, it was just very blunt. We were actually in the church, and it had been after an event, and we had just sent all of the last youth back with their parents, and we were closing up for the night, and he just came on to me and said, "Don't kiss me back." And then he kissed me. And as a just barely 18-year-old that was very sheltered, I didn't know. I mean, I felt flattered. I felt scared. I felt a lot of things. But that was the moment where, he really just crossed that next line.
And it just kind of came out of nowhere. You just randomly just did that?
Yep. Yeah, we were, like I said, locking up the church, and he grabbed my hand when I was walking out of a hallway and just said, "Don't kiss me back," and kissed me. And I did not see it coming at all. It totally took me by surprise, because he had been openly talking about, oh, we're friends, which, again, you'd think now as an adult, I don't know why these other adults didn't see this as a red flag. He would openly talk about our quote unquote friendship, even though I was a 16, 17-year-old girl and he was, in his 20s. But yeah.
Do you remember what you felt after that happened?
I was confused. I also felt flattered that this person that I had looked up to had given me that sort of attention. It's one of those things that made the situation so hard, because if it wasn't for therapy, I really would have struggled thinking that I was just all the things that a lot of people were saying I was, because I didn't understand the full extent of the fact that what was happening was wrong. Right away, when he kissed me, my brain said, whoa, 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 this isn't right. But I just felt so seen. And that was something that this man was very intelligent. And I think he saw in me from the beginning as I was someone that was kind of starved for feeling like I mattered and was seen. And so it was a big mix of guilt and shame and fear, but also feeling special in a way.
And did this sort of thing continue? Like, what was the next time that you guys interacted? Was it a little awkward, or did it start to progress even further than that?
Yeah. So it, after he crossed that boundary and didn't meet with me shoving him away or telling him no, it progressed very quickly where, we would be hanging out probably, I'd say at least once a week, once every other week. And this was just, very outright. Like, I would tell my parents, hey, I'm going to his house. We're going to be playing video games. Okay, cool. Like, we'd go. And I remember having a conversation with him because he just wouldn't really bring it up, where I said, like, this is wrong. Like, you're married. At the time, I didn't feel like I was young. You think that you're grown, but you're 18 years old, and, by the law, you're an adult. And so I carried a lot of responsibility, but I just remember telling him, this doesn't feel right. I don't feel right. And he would agree with me every time. He'd say, no, you're right. But then he would somehow just get me back into, he just force himself on me, where I had a lot of shame, because if I told him no, if I told him stop, he would stop. But there was a lot of times that I didn't. He would do things like start to talk about his marital issues, which, again, looking back after therapy, that is a huge, huge red flag. No married person should be talking to you about their marital sexual issues. He would put a lot of pressure on me by saying, things like, if anybody knew about us, like, our lives would be over, and I'm the only one that understands you. Very subtle ways of making me feel isolated and scared, and like I couldn't talk to anybody. But at the same time, bonding me to him, because we both shared in this experience together, kind of thing. And then it eventually escalated to a point where I wasn't happy. He forced me to give him a blowjob, or the politically correct way of saying that. Forced my head down, and that was a boundary for me. I never wanted to see or touch anyone that was not my husband. I had boyfriends before, but, just kissed, held hands. I was very sheltered, and that crossed a line that I never wanted to cross. And I think that's when something kind of broke in me.
Before we continue this episode, we do have some sponsors. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. There's moments in our lives where we feel like we need to get something off our chest, where we want to speak with people, but we maybe end up turning to the wrong people. Maybe we're trauma dumping to a bartender, or oversharing with our barber, or turning the group chat into an emotional support session. But the real answer is that we need to speak about things like relationships, anxiety, depression, or clinical issues with an actual therapist. There's nothing against our friends and family and the people in our lives, because they do provide a level of support, which is crucial. However, they are not licensed professionals. Therapists are clinically trained, they're credentialed, and they're able to help you through the long term with whatever your needs may be. And it's a misconception. Therapy isn't just for people who have experienced a major trauma. you can talk about everyday things, whether it be anxiety, depression, relationships, friendships, the stress of the job. A therapist can help you to provide coping mechanisms for yourself, to understand more things about yourself, and ultimately just be the best, most functioning version of yourself. And BetterHelp has been helping people find their perfect match with a therapist for over 10 years. It has a 4.9 rating out of 1.7 million client session reviews. That's a lot of people that have used BetterHelp. I always credit therapy with getting to the point that I am today. Still a lot of work to do, but I've been able to accomplish a lot in a short period of time recently and juggle a lot of stress and obstacles and big life achievements at the same time that I don't think it would have been possible for me to navigate this all so seamlessly without having a therapist. And BetterHelp is super flexible. It's completely online, and you can pause your subscription whenever you need to, and you can switch a therapist anytime at no extra cost. It's super convenient. You can join a session with a therapist at the click of a button, and that helps fit therapy into your busy life. No waiting in waiting rooms or commuting or anything like that. And our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/OPL. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/OPL. Again, it's great to talk to your mom, but sometimes you got to talk to someone about your mom, if you know what I'm saying. So reach out to a therapist and head to betterhelp.com/OPL. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/OPL. This podcast is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one website platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. That's whether you're starting a business or looking to scale a business. For this podcast, the first website we ever made, and the one that we still use today, is a Squarespace website. We needed something that had a nice design that we could send people to who might want to be a guest on this show. So we created a website that explained what we're doing here at other people's lives and had a form for people to fill out. And that is still the form and the website we use today for all the guests who come on this show. They all reach out through that website. That goes to our email, and then we're able to respond back to them. We've used Squarespace for a number of things in the studio. For the Base Me Yard podcast, our entire tour website, which has all our tour dates and links to ticket sales, is also on Squarespace. The best part is you don't have to be very skilled to make a beautiful looking website. You can have a fully custom website in just a few steps. It's amazing. It'll look like you actually know how to code and do design, but that's not the case. There's amazing templates they could pick from. If you want to customize it yourself, there's a full drag and drop system as well. You can also get your domain through Squarespace. You can set up fundraising. You can accept donations. You can host videos. There's everything that you want to do on a website, you can do on Squarespace. So you can head to squarespace.com/OPL to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code OPL. That is squarespace.com/OPL, and use that code OPL. You're going to get 10% off a website or a domain. Now back to the show.
So when you say that something broke in you, can you just kind of describe what you mean by that? And like, you know, after that sort of happens, is there now this kind of pushback of like, you're starting to realize this is completely inappropriate?
Yeah. I think I knew it all along. I wasn't stupid. I knew that what was going on was wrong, but I still, at the time, didn't really see him as using me. I'd have moments where I'd be like, look, this guy is a piece of crap. He is sneaking around, having me fulfill his needs and whatever he's got going on in his head. But then that's it. Like, this isn't right. But, yeah, I had times that I tried to tell him, no, this is not okay. And
was there kind of confusion and fear around like him being an authority figure too? Because, you know, we hear these stories all the time from Catholic priests to, you know, Christian pastors, and it's this person who is not just an adult, so they're an authority figure, but for you to just hear you say one of the reasons you were upset is, I guess you alluded to like wanting to remain celibate until you were married.
Yes.
Which is like you're trying to follow this path of Christianity, and this person is an authority figure as an adult, but also an authority in the sense of they're the one that's supposed to be guiding you, and you are, into your faith trying to follow this. So just the confusion around that, like this person is now doing the opposite. This is supposed to be, for lack of a better term, like the middleman for God, and they are doing the opposite of what I have been told and I'm trying to follow.
Yes, exactly. It caused a lot of confusion. And even though in your head, I'm a hard-headed person and I'm like, I know that this isn't right, but yeah, you nailed it on the head with clergy sexual abuse is like the technical term for it. It's very much about power imbalance. And there's a lot of women, men too, much, much older than I was at the time, full blown, 40-year-olds I've heard stories of that have fallen prey to this because the power imbalance is so strong. And these are people where, they're married, the spouse, the victim's married, the perpetrator's married, but they still get away with it because there's just so much trust that is there just from them being a religious leader. So you trust that they know what they're doing or have your best interests at heart. One of the things that he would say to me at times that I'd say, no, I'm not okay with this was, well, it doesn't count if there's no penetration. So sometimes he was very blunt like that. And sometimes he would try to, act like he was going along with it. Like, yeah, you're right. I just can't help it. Or, yeah, you're right. But, such and such at the church, I'm pretty sure they're having a thing with this person. I mean, he pulled out all the stops.
Did this kind of affect your relationship with religion at all?
It surprisingly didn't. To this day, I'm very strong in my faith with God. However, it taught me a very important lesson about people and the religious institution. I like to tell people I don't really say I have a religion. I say I have a relationship with God and people suck. And so Thankfully, I think if I didn't have such a strong faith in God and didn't have so many experiences in my life where, he proved faithful, I think that this would have broke me. And I still to this day have trouble, getting into a church building and not feeling distrustful. But at the end of the day, with my faith, thankfully, if anything, I was able to sort of lean on that and kind of grow and realizing that, sometimes religion, it becomes too much about the people and not enough about what it's supposed to be about.
And ultimately, when he crossed the line and you realized you were done, how did you remove yourself from the situation? And did you ultimately come forward or report this?
Yes. So the reason that it came to light was actually thanks to my baby brother. He found texts on my phone, and I remember vividly the text that he had seen on my little flip phone and that he told my parents about was this man had told me, next time I see you, I'm going to get you naked. Because that was one thing that I'd never allowed him to take my clothes off. I never allowed any of that. And I was sticking by that, and I was proud of that. And so it was, a threat, and he was quite young at the time. And so he just showed my parents, and they flipped out. They were understandably very upset and distressed. But the aftermath of that, the entire church that I had been close to, these people had known me since I was 6, all of them turned on me and my family. They started, speaking behind our backs, calling me a homewrecker, a mistress. Nobody but one person in that church asked us what if we were okay and what our side of the story was. So I was a very stubborn person. And once I saw how my family was being treated, I arranged a meeting with the pastor, and I wrote out everything I wanted to say because I was nervous, and I didn't understand at the time that I had been abused, but I basically said, this is what happened, and please don't drag my family's name through the mud over it. And they essentially said, we think it would be best if you guys left the church. And that youth pastor, he ended up just saying he was going to work on his marriage, and he just left of his own free will. And then he ended up actually getting a job at my university as a professor. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, no, we're not going to have that. Because at that point I had been to therapy and had my eyes opened. And at the advice of my therapist, he said, a lot of people don't feel strong enough to stand up or stick up for themselves. But if you do, I would recommend you do it, because he will do this again. He had threatened me by, writing a story for me to edit. And it was about a killer who kept women in his basement that had wronged him and raped him and killed him. And my therapist said, that was a threat on your life. This man, they need to know. So I took it to the school, and they believed me, and they just said, all right, we're going to tell him that we found, we think he should find another job. But again, nobody ever said the reasons why. I just saw over and over him being protected. And best case, people would hear me out. Worst case, people would label me as, crazy.
And obviously you feel like they were protecting him just because he was this guy who was part of the church.
Yeah, I think the sad thing is a lot of institutions are more worried about their image than actually protecting, members of whatever it is, their school, their church, their business. And you see it a lot. And so I think it was even less about protecting him and more about not having their names associated with something as serious as sexual abuse.
Before we finish up this episode, we do have one more sponsor. This episode is sponsored by EveryPlate. If you think that you have to spend a ton of money and a ton of time creating delicious meals in your own kitchen, you are wrong. When you use EveryPlate, you get restaurant-level food. I'm talking things like crispy buffalo ranch chicken, cheesy Mexican, street corn hash, amazing meals that are easy to prepare and affordable. You'll spend way less on these amazing home-cooked meals than you will grocery shopping, and way, way less than if you're going out to restaurants. I was tired of ordering food all the time, and I was also tired of just having the same thing over and over. So with EveryPlate, they have easy-to-follow recipes that will take 30 minutes or less to make, and they have a constantly rotating weekly lineup of recipes that get delivered right to your door. So you're getting new dishes all the time. It keeps it fresh. Everything's amazing. It's super easy. You just go to their website here. You pick your meals. They get delivered. Their pre-portioned ingredients will show up at your door, chilled, ready to go. Then you just get to cook, eat, and relax. These are 6-step recipes, and that dinner will be on your table in 30 minutes or less. Some of the dishes I had lately are sweet chili chicken, super smashed burgers, and pork and sausage and pepper penne. That was delicious. And herb crusted chicken. A ton of dishes like this. Like I said, it rotates weekly. So what are you waiting for? Dig into these flavor-packed meals. Your household will love it, and new customers can enjoy this special offer of only $1.99 a meal. So go to everyplate.com/podcast and use the code OPL199 to get started. Applied as discount on the first box, limited time only. Again, go to everyplate.com/podcast and use the code OPL199. These are going to be meals for just $1.99. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a story you hear time and time again, is this, it's just immediately brush this under the rug, kind of quietly remove the person. And then in so many cases, I mean, it was the whole, Catholic Church of just moving these priests around and ultimately giving them the opportunity to do this again. It's crazy to hear how that is just like the solution is to just kind of cover it up. And if anything, isolate the victims, which is terrible. And in this case, were there no ramifications for this guy? Like, he ended up leaving the university, but probably just got a job somewhere else.
Yeah, he actually went on to be a head pastor of multiple other churches. So that was great to see. My therapist also encouraged me to confront him if I had the opportunity, because again, I was in a position where once I understood what happened to me, I mean, I was a kid that thought that this person loved me and that they had my best interests at heart. Once you realize the reality of what you just went through, it's a lot to process, and I needed that closure. And so when he suggested, hey, if he's at that college, he knew I was going to go to the board and tell them everything. He said, if you have the opportunity to look him in the eye, like, you do that. I think you could do that. And to this day, I'm very grateful that I did do it. It was one of the scariest things I ever did, but I caught him in the parking lot and I approached him. And, the last time this man had seen me, he thought he had me wrapped around his finger. And I looked him in the eye, and, in the back of your mind, you're like, well, maybe this person did care about me. Maybe this is all in my head. And when I approached him, I said, hey, I just need to talk to you for a second. He right away tried to, I miss you. It's been a long time since I've seen you. I miss playing video games. I miss this. And I just said, I know what you did to me. And I needed you to know that. And he went from sweet talking to like a light switch. His face fell and he said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to tell someone? Are you going to report me? And that was just such a powerful moment for me. It was like, no, this is a moment I wish everybody could have, where that blindfold is just ripped off your eyes. You're like, no, you're a monster. And everything that I've been fighting to come to terms with is true. And I'm seeing it with my own eyes. And I know a lot of people don't get that moment, but it was big for me.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's powerful to hear, just the opportunity to, like you said, kind of see that validation for yourself, in his eyes and in his face, that you know what happened, what happened to you, and he knows it's wrong. And, especially going through the process of so many people trying to cover this up or just push it aside. And, it's that validation of like, I'm not crazy. This is what happened to me and it's wrong. That must have been cathartic.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So now in your life, it seems like throughout you've really alluded to how much work you've done in therapy, the opportunity to confront him. I think this is both so important to raise awareness for kind of grooming and people in this position of power, and especially religious figures, because this happens so often in that setting. But also at the same time, it's just great to hear you kind of processing this, leaning so much on therapy. Can you just talk about where you are now? You joke that you're old, but like with the years that have passed, where you're at now with this, like how you've kind of processed, come to terms, and how it, I guess, affects your life now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's the main thing I'd say is I don't know where I would be without therapy. It's so, so important. Even if you don't feel like you need it, you don't have any quote unquote major issue, therapy really is just, it's fantastic. It's something I recommend to everybody. I'm still in therapy for, just life. But that subject does come up to this day. I'm 36 now, and, it's been a long time, but it, for a while, had really impacted my sex life, because those were my first sexual experiences, and they had been tainted in such a weird situation that there's, subconscious pathways and feelings and emotions and flashbacks and all these things tied to, your sexual experience. But then beyond that, just learning to trust myself. That's something I'm still working on, because, I fell victim to somebody who I did trust and did see as somebody worth trusting. And so that's something to this day that I do struggle with. There's still a lot of, I wouldn't say shame. I think I've come past that point, but there's still a lot of self-deprecation that I have in my head, just not directly because of that situation, but I know I still carry regrets, and therapy has really, really just helped keep me on track and build up my confidence as a person and as a mom. I'm a mom now. I'm married. My husband's great. My kids are amazing. And just anyone out there that has been in a similar situation. I mean, I went from my family, my church, they all turned against me, and I felt like I didn't have anybody and that I could not have messed up worse, to, living a life beyond that. And it doesn't have a hold on me anymore. Once in a while it rears its ugly head in one way or another, but there is life outside of situations like that. And I've taken the lessons I've learned from it, and I think been a better person because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super important for us to make an episode like this, and we appreciate you, telling us your story on this platform as well, especially, looking back in hindsight and giving yourself that grace of like, I was young. So I getting rid of that like shame and guilt that, it was something that you were actively doing. People can very easily fall into that, but kind of like realizing through therapy that this is something that this man was very calculated about and threatening you in weird little ways that maybe at the time were hard to understand. But, through the work in therapy, finding out, what was actually going on, and then coming on this show and expressing all that, I think is important, because I'm sure there are people, and we've kind of seen this a lot through emails we've seen, but a lot of people, when it comes to religion, of course, in everyday life, but also like in religious sort of scenarios where there is this power dynamic and threat of, God and Jesus and, doing right and wrong and that type of thing. It's really used as a tool. So I think it's important for you to kind of come on here and kind of show that through the work you can realize like these are the people that are actually doing something wrong. And even when the church or anyone else is trying to protect these people or just, kind of swipe it under the rug, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you were wrong for speaking up or anything like that. So, we just appreciate you coming on and talking to us and letting people know that, especially young women that may find themselves in a similar situation, unfortunately.
Of course, I really, really appreciate you guys letting me speak out on this platform. I think the work that you guys are doing is great, and I just appreciate being given the platform to speak out. If even one person hears me, then that would be enough for me. So,
well, that will absolutely be the case. And just like Joe said, it's so gross and scary to hear how premeditated these tactics are with grooming, and just you walking through all of that is so helpful. And trust us, like more than one person who needs to hear this will hear your story. And just like Joe said, like it's so easy to get caught up and angry and wish that there were more kind of consequences and ramifications for this guy, but you can only control that so much, or you can't control it. But what you can control is how you live the rest of your life. And it's beautiful and incredible to hear like where you are now with your family and the point that you've gotten to. So that is super helpful for, I think, just anyone to hear. So again, thank you so much. And we wish you the best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right,
have a good one.
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too.
There's just so much to unpack in that story, but like we just said at the end, the work she's done to be able to live with this and move on is so important. Like just as important as just the red flags and the warning signs of being groomed by someone. I just feel like she's really the right person to tell that story.
Yeah. And also like the other silver lining is that it didn't really shake her faith in any sort of way, which a lot of the times it can. A lot of people, this happens to them and they go, I just don't believe in religion anymore. And if you're a religious person, I think that like, losing that because of a negative experience seems, I guess, unfortunate. But it's good to hear that through therapy, and even though there's a traumatic phase of this whole experience where it seems like no one wants to believe you, or people just want to protect the image of the church, or for whatever reason, I don't even know. like there's no holding those kind of people accountable. And we've heard tons of stories like that through emails and on this show multiple times where someone has done something completely wrong, it's reported, and then it's kind of swept under the rug, and this person goes on to just live their life and nothing happens to them. And like you said, unfortunately, you don't have control of that part. You can only do the work on your experience through therapy, through talking and bringing it up. And a lot of people sometimes don't have the strength to even bring it up and to call people out on that. But I hope that anyone who's listening to this who feels like they're going through something, or if they find themselves in that sort of situation, there's no right way to sort of handle that. And if you don't feel like bringing it up, that's your prerogative. But I think the thing that you need to do is, work on the things that you can control. Like you were saying before, your relationship with yourself, and not blaming yourself or carrying around that guilt, which obviously is easier said than done. But that's going to be the most important part of this entire thing, because you want to be able to get past it and live your life. And, you can't attach yourself to, or you have to try to not attach yourself to, the consequences or like someone else's consequences, because we've seen it time and time and again, especially like men in the church. A lot of the times nothing happens to them. And that's just
does not get served.
Yeah, not all the time. So, the only thing that you can control is your relationship with your faith, if you're religious, and your relationship with yourself, and, just trying to live as true as you can through that.
Yeah. And I think lastly, like, it's just a great lesson for parents too. And it's so easy to just blindly trust. Like, you look at a church, she started out by saying this was supposed to be the safest place, but the place that seemingly could be the safest is where you then become the most vulnerable. And that's what's so scary. And like, yes, you want to trust that people are good and that these monsters don't exist in certain places, but these monsters exist everywhere. Like, that's the scary reality. So, listening to your kids, looking for those warning signs. And unfortunately, we're almost all tainted to go into these situations where we have to have a little bit of doubt, because that's what can protect someone.
Yeah. But for anyone out there that would like to be a guest on our show, hit us up. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at OPL Podcast. Leave comments in the episode. So many comments lately. So many listeners and viewers talking to each other, dissecting these episodes. We read them. We love to see it. And we just love what this community continues to become. So thank you, everyone.
Yep, that was all. See you guys next time.